$15 billion. That is the value of the cryptocurrency seized by the United States Department of Justice on October 14, 2025, 127,271 Bitcoin. The largest asset forfeiture in American history. And the man who allegedly controlled it all, a 37-year-old Chinese-born tycoon named Chen Xi, was not arrested at a compound in Cambodia. He was not detained at an airport. He was extradited to China, not to the United States, whose prosecutors had indicted him. To China, the country whose citizenship he had renounced. This is not just a story about a $15 billion heist. It's about how one man turned entire city blocks into prisons, and why when the world finally caught up to him, the system designed to deliver justice actually helped him disappear. Sihanoukville, Cambodia, a coastal city. Once a backpacker destination, then the casinos arrived. Chinese developers, lax regulation, gambling licenses that were, in practice, available to anyone with cash. With the casinos came organized crime, money laundering, prostitution, drug trafficking, and then something worse. These were not hidden facilities, they were not underground operations. They were walled complexes, hotels, office buildings, entire city blocks, where thousands of workers were held against their will. The DOJ indictment describes them explicitly: prison-like compounds, workers trafficked from across Asia, Vietnam, Thailand, China, the Philippines. Promised legitimate jobs, delivered into forced labor. Their job, cryptocurrency investment fraud. The scheme the world now calls pig butchering. Here's what that term actually means. It is not a metaphor, it refers to the practice of fattening a victim, building trust over weeks, sometimes months before slaughter. The worker, forced to operate from inside one of these compounds, contacts a victim through a messaging app, WhatsApp, Telegram, a dating platform. They build a relationship. They present an investment opportunity, cryptocurrency, guaranteed returns. The victim transfers funds, the platform shows profits. The victim transfers more, and more, and more. Default when the victim tries to withdraw, the platform demands fees, taxes, processing charges. The victim pays those too. Eventually, as sometimes after the victim has lost their life savings, their retirement, their children's college funds, the platform disappears. The DOJ estimates billions of dollars were stolen from victims in the United States alone. The FBI's Internet Crime Report documented $9 billion in American investment fraud losses in 2024, a significant portion traced back to these compounds. This distinction matters. This was not a scam. This was an industry. And the man the US government alleges built it was named Chen Xi. Let's be precise about who Chen Xi was and who he presented himself to be. Born December 16, 1987, Fujian Province, China. His first businesses, an internet cafe and gaming centers in the provincial capital of Fuzhou. Then, in 2011, he moved into what his corporate biography called the uncharted waters of real estate investment in Cambodia. When Chen Xi arrived in Cambodia, he arrived with enormous amounts of cash. He acquired Cambodian citizenship, a process available to foreign nationals who donate $150,000 to the Cambodian state. He built the Prince Holding Group, a conglomerate that would eventually operate dozens of business entities in more than 30 countries. Real estate development, financial services, consumer services, luxury hotels, grocery stores, even watch dealerships. The public face was philanthropy, scholarships, community programs. The Prince Group website, before it was taken down, described a legitimate multinational corporation. The private face was something else entirely. The DOJ indictment alleges that the Prince Group was, in reality, one of Asia's largest transnational criminal organizations. It operated through more than 100 shell companies and entities across 12 countries and territories, from Singapore to St. Kitts and Nevis. The money flowed through cryptocurrencies, through shell companies, through the international banking system itself. The CNN investigation reported that at one point, Chen Xi's operation was earning approximately $30 million per day. Here is a question that has never been answered publicly. How does a 37-year-old man who began his career running internet cafes in Fuzhou build a conglomerate operating in 30 countries with access to the highest levels of the Cambodian government? How does someone whose first known business was a gaming center in a provincial capital end up, within a decade, as a senior advisor to the Cambodian government at the rank of minister? This is not speculation. The photograph exists. April 25, 2022. The Peace Palace, Phnom Penh. Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen meets with a delegation of investors. Chen Xi is in the photograph, posted to Hun Sen's official media page on Facebook. The meeting was public. The relationship was public. The criminal enterprise, according to the U.S. government, was operating simultaneously. While thousands were trapped behind those walls, the money they were stealing wasn't just sitting in a bank. It was moving through a digital labyrinth that even the FBI struggled to map. Here is what the financial infrastructure actually looked like. The victims transferred cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tether, to wallet addresses controlled by the Prince Group. Those funds were then moved through what blockchain analysts call peeling chains, a sequence of transactions designed to obscure origin. The cryptocurrency passed through dozens, sometimes hundreds of wallet addresses, each one stripping away another layer of traceability. Then the cleaned funds arrived at major cryptocurrency exchanges: Binance, OKX, HTX, Huioni Group. Wait, the ICIJ coin laundry investigation, published November 17, 2025, by 113 journalists from 38 media partners, documented exactly how this worked. Between Binance's November 2023 guilty plea for anti-money laundering failures and its founder's pardon in October 2025, at least $408 million in cryptocurrency linked to Cambodian scam networks flowed to Binance accounts. $408 million, while the company was under the supervision of court-appointed compliance monitors. OKX, which had also pleaded guilty to operating an illegal money transmitter, continued to receive hundreds of millions from the same networks. More than $161 million after the U.S. Treasury specifically labeled Huioni Group a primary money laundering concern. This is what institutional complicity looks like. It does not look like a conspiracy. It rarely does. It looks like an industry that has been told to stop processing criminal proceeds and has chosen, instead, to continue charging transaction fees. The exchanges, of course, deny wrongdoing. Binance says it works closely with global law enforcement. OKX says it invests heavily in compliance. These are not false statements, they are incomplete statements. They describe what the exchanges say they do. They do not describe what the blockchain evidence shows they actually did. That distinction matters. Then something extraordinary happened. On October 14, 2025, the United States government seized 127,271 Bitcoin, $15 billion. The largest forfeiture in DOJ history, the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, the FBI Director, the Assistant Attorney General for National Security, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of New York, all signed their names to the announcement. Chen Xi was indicted. Wire fraud conspiracy. Money laundering conspiracy. He faced up to 40 years in federal prison. And he was not arrested. He remained in Cambodia, a country with no extradition treaty with the United States. A country where he was a senior advisor to the government at the rank of minister. What happened next? 3 months. October 14, 2025 to January 6, 2026, the U.S. indictment was public. The sanctions were public minus 146 targets, the largest action ever taken against a cybercriminal transnational criminal organization. The forfeiture was public, $15 billion, the largest in DOJ history. The evidence was public: compound locations, shell company networks, blockchain flows. And for 3 months, Chen Xi remained at large. Then, on January 6, 2026, Cambodia arrested him. And then Cambodia extradited him to China. Not to the United States, which had indicted him. Not to the United Kingdom, where he held citizenship and owned property. To China, the country whose citizenship he had renounced years earlier to become Cambodian. The Chinese public security statement was brief. Chen Xi was now in Chinese custody. He would face Chinese justice. No mention of the U.S. indictment. No mention of the $15 billion forfeiture. No mention of the victims. Here is a question that has never been answered publicly. Why? There are diplomatic defenders who will raise legitimate points here. Cambodia has no extradition treaty with the United States. China is Cambodia's largest foreign investor and closest strategic ally. Chen Xi was born in China. He committed crimes, allegedly, that involved Chinese victims. All of that is true. And none of it fully explains why a man indicted by the United States, whose alleged crimes victimized Americans, whose stolen assets were seized by American authorities, whose criminal organization was dismantled through American investigation, was sent to a country that had already been his home and that he had already renounced it. This is not a question about legal procedure. It is a question about political protection. Who benefits from Chen Xi being tried in China rather than the United States? What does China's criminal justice system gain from custody of a man who can testify about the institutional architecture that enabled his operation, the payments to Cambodian officials, the relationships with Chinese developers, the diplomatic arrangements that allowed scam compounds to operate for years with inside of government buildings? Let's be precise about what we're looking at. The investigation that was supposed to demonstrate international cooperation against transnational crime produced, in its final act, an extradition that removed the principal defendant from American jurisdiction. The machinery built to deliver justice delivered. Instead, a transfer of custody to the country least likely to expose the institutional relationships that made the crime possible. This is not a story about one man. Chen Xi is a name on an indictment. The Prince Group is an entity on a sanctions list. These are the visible artifacts of a system that operates beneath them. The system works like this. First, a geography of impunity. Cambodia, like many developing nations, offers citizenship for investment, casino licenses for development, and limited regulatory oversight for both. The result is not accidental, it is structural. The same mechanisms that attract legitimate foreign investment also attract criminal enterprises. The distinction between the two, in practice, depends entirely on enforcement capacity, which, by design, is limited. Second, a financial architecture of concealment. Cryptocurrency exchanges operate across jurisdictions. They are subject to different regulatory regimes. They process transactions at speeds that make traditional anti-money laundering controls irrelevant. When one jurisdiction demands compliance, the exchange can operate from another. The ICIJ investigation documented exactly this dynamic. Exchanges that had already been sanctioned, already pleaded guilty, already agreed to compliance monitoring, continuing to process criminal proceeds. Not because they were unable to stop, because stopping would reduce transaction fees. Third, a diplomatic architecture of protection. Cambodia has no extradition treaty with the United States. This is not an accident, it is a sovereign choice. And the consequence of that choice, in this case, was that the principal defendant in the largest financial fraud case in American history was transferred to a country whose strategic interests are not aligned with American prosecution. These are not editorial judgments, these are documented failures contained in the DOJ indictment, the Treasury sanctions, the ICIJ investigation, and the public record of the extradition itself. The total architecture, the geography, the finance, the diplomacy functioned as designed. It protected the people who operated within it. And when the system was finally breached, when $15 billion was seized, when 146 targets were sanctioned, when the largest forfeiture in DOJ history was announced, the final mechanism activated. The defendant was removed from the jurisdiction that had dismantled his operation. The victims remain. The FBI estimates Americans lost more than $9 billion to online investment fraud in 2024. The scam compounds across Southeast Asia continue to operate. Not all of them, not all at the same scale, but the infrastructure persists. New operators replace the sanctioned ones. New shell companies replace the identified ones. The system endures. The $15 billion in Bitcoin is in US government custody. It will be forfeited. It will not be returned to the victims, most of whom will never be identified, whose losses are buried in blockchain transactions that lead to wallets, that lead to exchanges, that lead to shell companies, that lead nowhere. The photograph remains. April 25, 2022. The Peace Palace, Phnom Penh. Chen Xi, 34 years old, shaking hands with the Prime Minister. Posted to Facebook by the Prime Minister's official media page. Public, unremarkable at the time. Evidence now. Some cases are closed because they are resolved. This case is closed because the defendant was removed from the jurisdiction that could prosecute him. The truth isn't.